Chapter 2, Mishnah 2. The Mishnah continues to give one more example of a person whose immersion is uncertain. If a mikveh that was previously measured and found to contain 40 sa'ah was measured sometime later and found to be lacking 40 sa'ah, but we do not know at what point between the two measurings the loss of water occurred. The law is that all tahoros, foods that must be kept tahor, that were previously prepared on the basis of immersion in this mikveh, regardless of whether the mikveh was located in a private domain or a public domain, are considered tameh. This is because the rule that a doubt concerning tuma in a public domain is judged tahor applies only to a tahor item about which we have a question if it became tameh. For example, a tahor item was being carried in a public domain, and there's a question of whether it came in contact with something that would make it tameh. Since the chazaka, presumed status of the item, was one of tahara, we follow the chazaka and say that the item remained tahor. Here, however, the case is the exact opposite. The person or utensil was tameh until now, and the doubt is whether a valid immersion occurred that rendered it tahor. Since the chazaka is one of tuma, we follow that chazaka. Hence, the person or utensil, and by extension the tahoros he or it touched, are ruled tameh. The Mishnah limits its strict ruling specifically to where the tuma is of a biblical nature. In what case do these words apply? I.e., when do we say that where there is doubt surrounding the immersion of a tameh person, he is declared tameh because there is a chazaka of tuma? This applies only in a case where the immersion was to cleanse himself of a severe tuma, i.e., only where the person had become tameh from an ava tuma, in which case his tuma is biblical. However, in a case of a doubtful immersion for a mild tuma, i.e., a rabbinic tuma, this rule does not apply, and the person is ruled tahor. The Mishnah gives 4 examples of rabbinic tuma and states in all cases where we are in doubt regarding the validity of the immersion that would remove this tuma, the person is declared tahor. For example, 1. A person ate the equivalent of half a loaf of tameh foods, or 2. He drank a revius of tameh liquids, thereby becoming tameh by rabbinic decree, or 3. Someone who, after purifying himself in a mikveh, bathed his head and most of his body in she'uvin, drawn water, or 4. Someone upon whose head and the majority of his body fell 3 lugin of she'uvin, thereby making him tameh by rabbinic decree. In any of these 4 cases, if the person went down to immerse himself, but there's a doubt whether he in fact immersed himself or did not immerse himself, and even in the event that he did immerse himself, there is a doubt whether or not there was 40 sa'ah of water in the mikveh at the time of the immersion, or there were 2 mikvaos, one which contained 40 sa'ah and one which did not contain 40 sa'ah, and he immersed himself in one of them, but he does not know in which one he immersed himself. In all these cases of doubtful immersions, the person is ruled tahor, even if the mikveh is located in a private domain. Since the obligation for immersion in these cases is merely rabbinic, we apply the rule that a doubt involving a rabbinic law is treated leniently, and the person is ruled tahor. Another Tana disagrees. Rabbi Yossi rules the person tameh even in cases of doubtful immersions connected with rabbinic tuma. This is because Rabbi Yossi says that anything that has a chazaka of tuma, i.e. anything that certainly was tameh at some point, remains forever in its disqualified, i.e. tameh state, until it is known with certainty that it became tahor, i.e. until something occurs that definitely removes the previous tuma. Since in these cases the person was definitely tameh, and the immersion that would cleanse him of his tuma is in doubt, he is ruled tameh, despite the fact that his tuma is only of rabbinic origin. Even Rabbi Yossi agrees that sometimes we are lenient in doubtful cases regarding a rabbinic tuma, namely in cases where there is no chazak of tuma. However, an uncertainty regarding whether a person became rabbinically tameh, e.g. from eating tameh foods, or whether a person who would become tameh by rabbinic decree caused tuma to a loaf by touching it, is ruled tahor. That is, even Rabbi Yossi Even Rabbi Yossi agrees that we rule leniently in cases where the rabbinic tuma itself is uncertain to begin with. Since in these cases there is no chazaka of tuma, and the tuma is merely rabbinic, we rule leniently and say that the person in the first case, or the loaf he touched in the second case, is tahor.